Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Self-Serve Web Portals for Propane Customers. This is brought to you by our sponsor, Ad Systems. I'm Allison Barwatz from North Coast Media, digital editor for LP Gas Magazine, and I will be your event manager. Before we begin, I'm going to go over some ways that you can participate during today's presentation. Although you are currently in a listen-only mode, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Just type in the text box at the bottom left, then click Submit to place your question in the queue. You can also submit questions via Twitter by using the hashtag #AdWebinar. Questions that were submitted during registration have already gone to our panelists and may be covered in this webinar. Some questions may also be answered in an upcoming issue of LPS Magazine or in one of our e-newsletters. We strive to answer as many of your questions as possible. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's event, use the same Q&A box at the bottom left to tell us about your issue and click Submit. An assistant producer, Kelly Limpert, or I will personally assist you. Finally, a recording of this webinar will be available tomorrow afternoon at lpgasmagazine.com/webinars. You can get to that page now and bookmark it by clicking on the header above your slides. A link to the on-demand recording will also be emailed to you when it is available. Now, I'd like to turn today's event over to our moderator, LP Gas editor, Brian Richardson.
Thanks, Allison. Technology is one of the more popular topics for us to cover at LP Gas Magazine. As we see younger generations transitioning into the industry, the use of technology or retail operations is growing. But it's not only generational factors at play. The technology advancements out there today allow retailers to add efficiencies to their businesses while also strengthening their connections to customers. The benefits are simply too good to ignore, and the industry is taking notice. One of the companies working in this technology space today is New Jersey-based software provider Ad Systems. To help explain how propane retailers can use some of this technology is John Redman, the Vice President of Product Strategy for Ad Systems. John has more than 30 years of experience in the petroleum and propane industries. He's currently responsible for determining the strategic development direction of all Ad Systems products. In our lead-up to this webinar, you've seen a lot of references to web portals and self-service. John is here to explain that terminology and what it means for you and your customers. Ladies and gentlemen, here is John Redman.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. It's always great to work with LP Gas Magazine, and we appreciate you providing the platform today for today's discussion and presentation. I'm going to start off a little bit with a brief agenda so folks know what we're going to be talking about today at a high level. But one comment, actually, before I get started here. It's interesting. As part of preparing for today's webinar, I took a look at the top 50 publication in LP Gas Magazine. Every year, the magazine publishes the top 50 propane marketers in the country. And I did a bit of an unscientific survey and looked at each one of the websites for each one of the top 50 companies in the listing, and discovered it looked like about 19 out of the top 50 propane marketers today are either not offering self-service over their website, or if they are, it appeared to be fairly rudimentary. So it kind of reinforces maybe the appropriateness of today's discussion because the market certainly, I believe, is looking for self-service capabilities, and the market, I think, it somewhat has to catch up with where the consumer is today. So at a high level, the agenda today, I'm going to talk a little bit about who Ad Systems is. We're going to take a little bit of a look back at self-service history, a little bit of a trivia type exercise. We're going to talk about why maybe you should be considering offering self-service if you're not already. We're going to talk about some of the basic types of things that you could offer over a self-service portal, and then perhaps some of the more advanced things that companies are doing today. Then we're going to talk about there's various ways of implementing self-service, the technology piece. How do you go about offering self-service from a technology perspective? We're going to talk about the importance of determining and defining your business rules. Today, when consumers call your office, there are certain business rules I'm sure you apply to the conversation you have with your customer. How do you handle a customer that's on credit hold, as an example? So it's important to think through those business rules if you're going to extend the process out to your self-service portal. Then we're going to talk a little bit about connecting all of the various technologies today that are available that would fit the self-service model. And we're going to use the delivery order to cash process as the example. There are many examples, but I chose to use delivery order to cash today as the example. Then we're going to have some recommendations on how to go about implementing self-service over your website, and then a wrap up in a Q&A process. Okay, so briefly, a little bit about Ad Systems. We're a privately held company. We were founded back in 1973. We're a technology company that basically is focused on serving the petroleum and propane arena. That's all we do. We have about 160 employees spread about 4 offices. We have about 500 clients. We have client implementations in over 46 states and each one of the Canadian provinces. And then you can see below the list of the offices in both U.S. and Canada. Our market focus, again, is strictly propane and petroleum. So we focus in the propane market. That's one of the fastest growing pieces of our business. We also have a very large presence in the heating oil market, and we have a lot of customers that sell both propane and heating oil today. We have a big focus on HVAC as the market has looked for other ways to drive revenue. More and more companies are getting involved in full-blown HVAC type service. We also have a wholesale offering for both the petroleum and the propane market. We deal in the lubricant distribution space, and then also we have a very robust package that addresses the convenience store market also. Okay, a little bit of self-service history trivia here. I found this fairly interesting, actually, as I prepared for this presentation. The first self-service gasoline station was formed back in June of '64 in Westminster, Colorado, where people could pull in and pump their own gas. Today, that's pervasive, obviously, across the country. It's actually difficult to find a station where somebody will come out and pump gas for you, other than New Jersey, and I think there's one other state that does not legally support self-service. The other one I found interesting is the Chemical Bank back in the late '60s put what they at the time called a cash machine at one of their branch offices on Long Island. Today we would refer to it as an ATM machine, but it was a cash machine because you were assigned a card which defined how many dollars would come out of the machine when you put the card in the machine. So I could have a $25 card, somebody else could have a $50 card, and it would dispense the appropriate amount of cash. And I love this advertisement they ran. They actually ran an advertisement that said, "We will open on September 2nd and never close again." So one of my themes has always been in self-service, you cannot staff your office for the busiest day of the year. It's financially impractical to do that. So why not offer self-service for the customers that desire that method of dealing with you as a propane marketer? Another example of a little bit of self-service history, the first check-in kiosk, Continental Airlines back in 1995. So if you think about today, over 80% of passengers today, and it's probably a little bit higher than that, check in electronically, either over a website or at the kiosk at the airport. The one I found most fascinating is back in 1994, there was a company called Dabra formed. And the attorney for the owner of this company suggested he should change the name of the company because people were referring to it as cadaver. And lo and behold, when that company changed their name, it is now Amazon.com. And we certainly probably all understand the impact that Amazon has had on the retail industry and self-service and even the package delivery business today. So let's talk about why offer self-service. Now, you know, it's interesting, actually. A lot of these presentations over the years I've heard focused on the millennials, that the millennials are the ones that are driving this. And I think there's some truth to that. And if you look at the picture on the lower right-hand side, there are 3 millennials sitting on a park bench with their smartphones in their hand. And the joke here is they're actually talking to each other, but they're talking through their smartphone devices rather than turning and having a verbal conversation. But in reality, I think the whole market now is looking for self-service. So if I use myself as an example, if you saw the photograph earlier, I am clearly not a millennial. I actually lost my hair back in the prior century, actually. But just myself in the last 3 or 4 days, giving some examples of my self-service world. I was up on Florida Power and Light. I live in Orlando, and I was checking to see what my power bill was because it's warmer than normal this year, and it was less rain. So I wanted to see whether my power bill was more expensive this year than last year. So I was up on FP&L's website. I was able to check my current balance, and they actually pushed a message at me to promote the idea of me going on a budget program. I was recently in for my annual checkup with the doctor, and part of that checkup process is to get blood tests. So I signed up on Quest Diagnostics website to get notification when my latest blood results were available. So I've actually looked at that report before I even visited the doctor. My wife and I are considering going on a vacation. We like cruising, so I've actually submitted a request to cruisecompete.com to get competitive bids on the cruise that we're looking at. And I've already received bids from 8 to 10 travel agents across the country with their offering. I no longer get a newspaper delivered. I read Florida Today online. There's a hurricane developing out near the Bahamas that everybody down here in Florida is talking about. So I've signed up to get instant notifications as the status of that storm changes, so I'll be more informed. And then last but not least, this morning I got an email to let me know what my PNC bank balance is, because I've signed up for that notification. All of those things, historically, I would have been making a phone call for to find out, or I wouldn't make the phone call at all. I just would not be as informed as I am today on some of these self-service issues. So the theme here is it's just not millennials that are looking for self-service. One interesting exercise would be to do a survey of your own employees, asking them what self-service experience have they had, let's say in the last 2 weeks, and make a list up, and then compare what their consumer experience is with a bunch of other companies versus what you're currently offering today. That may be the driving force for you to decide we need to look at this self-service thing and maybe start moving down the path of offering an alternative for the customers that want to go in that direction. The other benefit, certainly, of self-service would be to increase the value of your website. Rather than just be a bulletin board, possibly drive revenue as a result of your website. So if you have a very good user experience from your website perspective, you have the opportunity to promote new products or possibly services to increase revenue. And probably as important as anything, to grow your business without adding CSRs in the office at your call center. This is an interesting survey that LP Gas Magazine did back in February of this year. There was a whole section on a survey that was done that reflected the hourly rates that the propane market pays people in different roles within the company. So in this case, I've highlighted a customer service rep. So on average, across the country, the average salary is about $15.35 an hour, which really would equate to about $41,000 a year, full-time employee, including benefits. And historically, we have seen that an average CSR on average is handling maybe between 1,000 to 1,500 accounts. So you could grow your business or possibly acquire a business without necessarily growing the people that are answering the phone. So let's talk a little bit about some self-service options to consider. In other words, if you're not doing self-service today, I always recommend you crawl before you walk, before you run. So the basic level of self-service, I believe, today would be let the customer look at some transaction history, maybe their payment history, maybe their delivery history. Certainly show them what their balance is, and offer a way of paying that balance from your website. It's very interesting. My first experience with self-service goes back to the early 2000s, and I was dealing with a very large energy marketer, and they were looking to be one of the first companies in the market to offer self-service. And they did a very detailed analysis of the type of phone calls they get from their customers. And it was fascinating to find out that a high percentage, I think it was as much as 20% of the phone calls they would receive at their call center was simply a customer wanting to know, how much money do I owe you? Why not offer that as your first step into self-service, in effect? All right, a little bit more advanced self-service options is to start to accept delivery orders over the web. Now, the reason I put that under advanced, we'll talk about business rules. There are certain business rules that you apply to a process of taking an order from a customer today if they call the office. We believe some of those business rules should be extended out to a self-service offering. Hence, we put it under the more advanced area as far as self-service is concerned. Accept service orders. And when we say service orders here, we're talking about scheduled service orders and non-scheduled service orders. And I think during the Q&A process, we'll talk about in more detail of some of the business rule decisions you should consider if you're going to start to schedule service work orders over your website. Some other options, possibly bill presentment. Let the customer come to your website to get their monthly statement possibly, or their delivery invoice, or maybe even deliver it electronically so they wouldn't necessarily have to go to your website to pull that down. Some additional advanced capabilities could be offer the sign-ups for pricing plans, possibly, maybe pre-buy plans. Tie that into risk management. A lot of the web portal developers that we deal with offer risk management, so we can see the sign-ups versus what your committed gallons are from your supplier potentially. In this world, typically it's a kind of a legal agreement, so the customer could be signing a document electronically over the web. The same thing would go for like lease agreements. Rather than having your customer spend 10 minutes on the phone with a CSR filling out a lease agreement, give the customer the option to go to your website and fill out the agreement and capture the signature. I think in both these cases, the ideal would be that your back office system has the ability to capture that legal document so it becomes a permanent record of that customer long term. Okay, let's talk about the marketing capability here. And again, this is some of the advanced type features. A number of the web portal developers that we deal with not only offer the basic self-service that we just talked about, they offer marketing capabilities. So this is an example that one of our partners provided, Deswin, where the data is being mined when the customer's on the web portal. So in this case, the customer owes us $1,399. So we're playing a marketing message to promote possibly getting on the budget program. So that, with that message, you don't want to play that message on the web to a customer that's already on the budget plan. You don't want to waste their time reading a message on some marketing or pricing capability that they're already on. Only push it to a customer that you want to sign up on a given budget plan, possibly. Another example, this example was provided by one of our partners, Prime Media, where it's a will call customer that's up on the website. And in this case, there's a little bit of a marketing piece that's been put together to promote that customer switching from will call to automatic. Possibly they're on the web right now attempting to place a delivery order, and certainly the marketer is much better off if their customer is on automatic delivery than will call. So this message would only be pushed to a customer that is currently a will call customer. And again, it's part of the mining the data that is locked away in your back office system. Why not use that data for promotional capabilities over your website? In this case, we're going to send a coupon. We're going to present a coupon over the portal. So again, why you don't want to offer this $100 off of this furnace installation to every single customer. So if you can see at the bottom of the screen, through the portal development, you're defining who's going to get that coupon. It's only going to be automatic delivery accounts that are enrolled on the budget account that have a zero balance. In other words, you can define the criteria on who you're going to offer the marketing program to. Now, these are really two kind of simple examples. This type of marketing through data mining can get very sophisticated and very finite as far as who you're proposing the marketing opportunity to. Some more advanced options to consider, and these are options that would be dependent upon having other technologies involved within your business. In other words, if you've got onboard delivery technology on your delivery trucks and they're wirelessly enabled, why not give the customer statuses either through push text messages or email, or just a posting on your website that they can log in? I'm at work. I requested a delivery. I want to know if that delivery has taken place. That's exactly what happens today if that consumer orders a package on Amazon. And the product you're delivering, Propane, is a much more important product to that customer likely than whatever they ordered on Amazon. And husband and wife today are typically both working. They're not at home, so they would like to check the status of that delivery or have that status pushed to them that the delivery was made or the delivery wasn't made, possibly because the gate was locked or the check wasn't available or those types of things. So some other advanced options in the service world, if you've got wireless technology that your service technicians are carrying around, the same type of thing could be handled here. When the work order is assigned to a technician, the notification can be delivered to the portal or via a push technology. When it's dispatched, when the technician arrives, when the work is completed, again, consumers are used to dealing with many, many companies this way. My guess is your consumer is not comparing you against the other local propane marketer. Your consumer more and more is comparing you against the FedExes of the world, the Amazons of the world, the UPSs of the world, those type of companies. They expect that level of service today. Another option to consider, again, these are all dependent upon other technologies. If you're doing tank monitoring today, why not present the tank monitor gallons or the percentage on the web portal? So if the customer thinks they need an order and they have a tank monitor, or the customer is just concerned that, we get the first cold weather forecast depending on where you are in the country. It's coming up on October. Everybody thinks they need a delivery because it's the first blow of cold weather coming through. Why not present the in-tank gallons based on what the tank monitor says is in the tank? Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the different types of ways of implementing self-service. We believe there's like 3 core ways of going about implementing self-service. There's a technique that we historically have referred to as sneakernet. In that world, you have a form possibly on your website where the customer could go in and request a delivery. That approach has some strengths because it's probably simple to implement, but it has a whole lot of weaknesses, and we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses of each one of these approaches as we go through the slides. There's also something called the dump and load approach, which we'll talk about in more detail as I go through that slide. And then there's a real-time web services approach, which happens to be the approach that Ad Systems utilizes in the marketplace with our website developing partners. So using the sneakernet method, and in each case we're going to talk about a delivery order as far as the process that the consumer wants to do. So on the right-hand side, we've got a lady out on the web, a consumer on the web, and she wants to order 200 gallons. In the sneakernet world, there is no real connection between the consumer on the web and your back office enterprise system. In the sneakernet world, typically what will happen is that order is placed through some sort of form on your website, and then an email typically would get generated. And then what happens is on the left-hand side of the screen, somebody in your CSR group would have to pick up that email and enter it into your enterprise system. Well, the downsides of that approach are there's really no account validation because there's no login process. We're not validating who that person is. There's no consumer information available to the consumer over the web. In other words, they can't see what their balance is. They can't see what their last payment is. They can't see when they're due for delivery. None of that would be available. There's no real-time credit status check taking place. So that person that's on that web at 11 o'clock at night could owe you $500, and they could be over 90 days. They just think they can sneak in at night and you'll wind up delivering tomorrow. Well, then in that case, if the customer's on credit hold, you would only discover that when the CSR attempts to put the order in, and now you're faced with having to call the customer back. You really haven't saved any office time in effect. You're not really gaining an ROI. You may be offering a pseudo web self-service over your web, but there really isn't an ROI on the back end part of the system. In sneakernet method also, there's no tank size validation. So this consumer could have a 500-gallon tank, and they could be putting a 1,000-gallon order in. Again, you would likely catch that when you put your order into your enterprise or back office system, but you're not really saving time. And in this world, in the sneakernet world, the most important bullet here is the order would have to be created manually in your enterprise or back office system. Okay, the dump and load method. Again, using delivery order as the example. What dump and load basically means is typically once a day, you take data from your enterprise or back office system and you dump it into a replicated database. So in effect, the minute you dump it, it starts to become stale. So the example here is, again, the consumer's on the web, they order 200 gallons. In the dump and load approach, you could offer account validation because you could offer a login where the customer's logging in. You could show them some account information, but it could be stale. You could do a credit status check, but again, that could be stale. And what I mean by that is maybe a payment was posted after the dump of the database was done. So we're not really dealing with real-time data in a dump and load approach. The data gets stale each minute that goes by after the dump took place. You could do the tank size versus order validation with dump and load, but again, in this world, you're still faced with having to create the order manually in the enterprise system. So in these first two methods, you may not be as likely to promote self-service because you're really not saving much work on the back end of the process, the office process. The approach we've taken historically with our clients that run our back office system is we take a web services approach to both delivery order and really all of the self-service items that we offer in the marketplace. Because in a web services method, in our case, we have a product called Smart Connect, which basically exposes back-end office capability through a secure methodology to the consumer on the web. So in a web services approach, the account validation takes place. The account information is available and current. It's basically the same information that your CSR would be looking at. So that payment that got posted, if it's on the account, the consumer on the web will see the payment on their account. The tank size and order validation takes place, obviously. There are business rules and validation that can be applied here. The same business rules that apply in our back office system are applied over the web. So if the customer attempts to place a 1,000-gallon order on a 500-gallon tank, it will not let them do that. It'll let them know that they're putting in an order larger than their tank, basically. And probably the most important thing here is in this world, the order is created live in the enterprise system. So now we're really gaining the ROI. That interaction that would typically take place by the consumer calling in the CSR, and statistics say that an average phone call from a customer takes about 10 to 12 minutes. So the best of this world here is that we not only eliminated the phone call to the office, but we've offered it to a consumer that would prefer not to make that phone call. They would prefer to deal with you over the web. Okay, so a little bit of a high-level overview of the three methods. So at the top of the screen, we have a column with the self-service feature. Then we have the three methods: SneakerNet, Dump and Load, and Web Services. And you can see the color coding kind of tries to represent the level of functionality that will be available with the various methods. So you can see with the SneakerNet approach, there's a lot of no's. It's just not possible. Or there's a lot of manual work that's required. As you progress to the right-hand, the center part of the screen, the center column, Dump and Load, the process starts to increase as far as functionality, but you can see that you're still faced with a lot of manual entries that have to take place in your back office enterprise system. And then as you get to the web services approach, then a whole lot of things are possible, and just about everything then is electronically automated, and you can apply business rules to each one of the processes that we're talking about here. Okay, I mentioned earlier the importance of determining your business rules. And again, I'm focused in delivery here, but the same process would be recommended if you're offering other types of self-service functions from your website. So the example here is, what do you do if the customer's not due for delivery? Real story, I was visiting with a company in Baltimore back about 10 years ago, and we were talking about offering web self-service, and the president of the company said, "John, I will never take orders over the web." And I said, "That's okay, that's just a piece that you would not implement." But I asked him why. Why wouldn't you accept orders over the web? And he said, well, you know what happens is in October 15th, we get the first cold weather forecast. Every customer thinks they need an order. So at least if they call, we have an opportunity to talk to them and explain, maybe based on our forecast system, it looks like you're not due for delivery. Well, my answer was, that's okay. You don't have to take orders over the web. But with the right implementation of self-service, you, in effect, could duplicate that conversation with the customer by providing information from your website. Provide when they're estimated, when they're due for delivery. Provide their in-tank percent or gallons. Or maybe you won't take the order, ask them to contact the office possibly. The other process in delivery, what do you do if the customer's on credit hold? Today, if they're calling the office, you have an opportunity to talk to them. Well, obviously, I would think if you're offering the payment capability off your website, the first thing you would do is promote the idea that they can make a payment. If you're taking credit cards over your website, that may be the easiest way for the customer to pay off an overdue balance. Or you may decide that this customer is repeatedly on hold, repeatedly overdue, and you need to have a more serious conversation with the customer. Through the mining of the data, that decision could be made behind the scenes. And if the customer's been overdue 5 times in the last year, you may want to collect a security deposit from them before you make another delivery possibly. Well, in that case, you would have them contact the office and have to go through the process of ordering by talking to somebody in your office. Okay, what I wanted to do here is kind of connect all of the various technologies that are possibly available to you in today's modern world. And in effect, this is showing the Amazon experience as it could be applied to a propane marketer, in effect, or a propane marketer's consumer. And we're going to use the delivery order to cash as the example, from the issuing of the order right through to collecting a payment, in effect. Okay, so we've got our consumer out there on the left-hand side. The consumer wants to put an order in for 200 gallons. In our case, in our particular case, we have the E3 product, which is our enterprise product. We have a mobile solution called Raven, which is an onboard truck solution, which is wirelessly enabled and is a dispatch piece that, in effect, is sitting between the enterprise system and the mobile device. So in this case, the example is the customer wants to get on the web and place an order. But in this example, they're on credit hold. And again, in this example, I'm using the real-time web services approach. They're on credit hold. The consumer's notified of that. We offer to allow them to use a credit card possibly to pay off the balance so they can proceed with their order. We capture the credit card. The web developer validates the card. You give an option possibly for the customer to store that card ongoing for recurring charges down the road. The overdue balance is paid off. We allow now the consumer to place the delivery order and maybe offer them an option to sign up for delivery notifications. So now, again, we're modeling the Amazon model where the package delivery is being tracked through the process. When they sign up, they could sign up to get email or text, or they would know to log into the website to get the status of their delivery. Going through the process now. So that order's come in. It came in through your enterprise system. Now dispatch is dealing with it. The dispatcher assigns the order. If the customer signed up for notification, they could get a push notification or a text, or possibly go to the portal to check the status of their delivery. The delivery is made. Again, to do this, you would require some sort of technology on your vehicle that is wireless, so the messages are coming in real time. So in this case, the delivery is made. The customer could get notification, again, through the portal or via an email or a text message, possibly. And then last but not least, when the credit card payment is applied to their account, just like I get today when I pay my American Express bill, I get an email to let me know that the payment's been applied. So in this case, either they would go to the portal to see that the payment's been applied or get the push email or text. So and again, in effect, that's the Amazon process turned into a propane marketer's world and meeting the consumer expectation, at least certain consumers. Okay, some recommendations. We highly recommend, if you're going to implement web self-service, that you hire a web/application developer, not a web designer. We believe there's a difference. A web designer may be able to put together a very pretty website, but if they're not an application developer, they may not possess the technical expertise to truly offer a full-service portal. The company you hire should have marketing talent, so they can put together a very good user experience on the web. And we think as important as anything, we believe you should be looking to hire people with industry experience. You're propane marketers. That's what you do. That's your expertise. What better thing to marry up a web developer with a back office product with a propane marketer? I think you wind up with a better product by partnering. And we happen to deal with a couple of companies in the country, Deswin and Prime Media. We've had a lot of experience with them, and they have a fair amount of experience within the market overall. So in other words, they're not just doing website development just for ad systems customers. They would be anxious to talk to you, I'm sure, for other back office systems. We also highly recommend you take a phased approach. If you're not offering self-service today, again, crawl before you walk, before you run. The most fundamental self-service that we would suggest is let the customer look at their transaction history, check their balance, and let them make payments over the web. It's really important to define your business rules because, again, you're taking processes that are typically been dealt with customer one-on-one with a CSR, and now you're extending that process over the web. So it's really important that you think through what your business process is in the office and probably how do you extend that over the web. And that would be working with your web developer and possibly your back office vendor to help you through that conversation. It's really important that you promote your website. You know, if you're going to spend some dollars here to develop it, it's important that you try to get as many customers signed up as possible. And it's also important that you measure the results. That maybe you have to tweak the process of taking a payment. Maybe you have to tweak the process of taking orders over the web because you're not getting the activity that you thought you were going to get. You could offer loyalty programs. If they sign up, they get maybe a discount on their next delivery, those types of things to try to get as many people that want to going through the self-service portal. Now, again, this is not to say that you no longer have CSRs in the office answering phones. The approach here is satisfy the consumer that wants the self-service option and continue to offer excellent service via the phone. And actually, if you can, for the people that want self-service over the web, if they have the path, you likely will have the ability to offer a more effective service to the people that want to call you. And something that's really important today, if you're hiring a web developer, it's really important that they're not only developing a portal that is accessible and usable through a desktop system, but today people are using their tablet, and more importantly, they're using their smartphone more and more to do web self-service. So it's important that the user interface that's developed is transportable across the technology platforms that consumers are using today. Okay, a little bit of a around-the-world tour of our core products. Mentioned Ad Energy E3. That's our core back office / enterprise system that runs as many companies that I referenced earlier early in the presentation. Raven is our onboard truck computer. We were one of the pioneers in onboard truck computing. The Raven product through multiple generations. It started back in 1995. And we have over 6,000 mobile devices deployed today in North America on delivery trucks. We have a product called Pegasus, which is our counterpart in field service. And that's an area that we're seeing an increased level of activity in the propane market. Pegasus historically was a product run by our heating oil companies, but more and more of the propane marketers are looking to deploy technology in the service world. We have a business intelligence product called Atlas that pushes management reports to the appropriate people in your organization. Smart Connect, I referenced, that's our suite of web services that allow a very interactive web experience to your consumer. And for the folks that may be on the phone that are in the convenience store market, we actually have a full-blown convenience store offering, both from a home office perspective and an in-store perspective. And a little bit of name dropping here. These are some example of our clients. Each one of these companies actually are utilizing the Smart Connect product and offering some level of self-service over their websites. Now, you may look at this slide and say, well, those are a lot of big companies, and I'm a smaller marketer. Maybe I sell 1 million or 2 million gallons a year in propane. It's actually interesting. We actually do support 11 out of the top 30 propane marketers in the country. They have our various technologies deployed. But if I look at the sales activity that we've had just in the last month and a half or so, we have signed a number of propane marketers that sell between 1 and 2 million gallons a year, and we've actually recently signed another one of the top 15 propane marketers in the country. So again, if you're a smaller marketer and you're looking to grow your business or looking to offer self-service, we would likely have some offerings that you may be interested at some point in time. Ryan, I'm going to turn it back to you. I think we're ready for some Q&A possibly.
Yes, thanks, John. A lot of good information here. We have collected some questions. Go through the list. A number of companies have asked, I already have a website. Will I have to start all over to add self-service?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually, and that was one of the more common questions that I think was asked during the registration process, but I also reached out to some of our development partners, the portal developers, and they said the same thing, that question is a very common question. And the answer is no. The technology we're talking about would be able to be plugged into an existing website. The only caution I would say there is that you need to take a look at your look and feel of your current website. There has to be a good user experience when they come on the web. And if you've developed your website, 5, 10 years ago, and you haven't looked at it from a marketing eye perspective, you may want to take a look at a refresh from a marketing perspective. But the answer is no. From a technology perspective, the self-service portal people can, in effect, add a tab, to keep it simple here, add a tab on your current website where the customer can log in When the user clicks on that tab, it in effect reaches out via web services typically to the portal application, and then from that point on, the user would be living in the portal application, and then they can provide a seamless way to come back to your existing website. So the answer is no. Don't let that be a prohibiting factor to consider offering self-service.
Another one here, do you also offer HVAC online capabilities, such as allowing a customer to schedule service or a tune-up?
Yeah, we do. And I read this correctly. This is a question specifically around my product offering, and the answer is yes, we positively do. And it's actually interesting is that if you're going to schedule service work orders over the web, it's important to consider how you're going to do that, first of all, and what your back office system capability is. And this is probably one of the clear examples of the benefit of using a web services approach. So as an example, in our back office system, if you're CSR scheduling a work order, we have the ability to determine what the type of work order it is, determine who's available, what technicians are available based on their skill set. We have the ability to try to drive the appointment based on the existing appointments in that geographic area already. So rather than just taking orders and having to deal with the inefficient nature of that type of interface, in effect, could be exposed to the consumer over the web. They wouldn't even know it necessarily, but behind the scenes, the software could be making the judgment, okay, they need this type of work order, this is the technicians available, and oh, by the way, we already have a service call booked in that geographic area, so why don't we present these appointment options to the consumer over the web? But without that real-time web service capability, scheduling service calls could be a bit problematic and may not actually be very effective. Taking just work order requests over the web, sure, you can do that, but then you're still faced with having to make that phone call back to the customer.
Can you give a customer too much information?
You know, that's a great question, actually. You know, I'll just use my product offering as an example. The Smart Connect product, in effect, could expose almost any piece of data that's on that customer record could be exposed over the web, and we certainly don't recommend that. There's certain data that exists in your back office system that you would not want to expose to the customer. I think a great approach would be is to look at maybe the 10 or 20 or so most common questions you get at your call center, the people that answer phones, and make a determination out of those 10 or 20, and there may not be that many, maybe there's only 5 in your world, but look at the type of information that you typically talk to the customer about during those exchanges over the phone, and then make a determination, do you want to present that data over the web to the customer? I think that's a good approach. These implementations should be very much focused on the process. Look at the process that takes place in the home office today and decide how am I going to extend that over the web, both from a data perspective, what am I presenting to the customer, but again, not to beat a dead horse, but the business rules. What business rules do you want to apply to that process if the customer's sitting out at 10 o'clock at night, there's nobody in your office, but they're engaging with your customer? And that's a really important theme here. They're engaging with your business over the web unattended, so you have to think it through.
Can you sync payments made on the web portal to our back office system with no human interaction?
Yeah, again, let me answer this one first from my product perspective, but I'll give you the marketplace answer also, I think. The answer is yes, through our product, the Smart Connect product, whether it's a one-time payment, a one-time check possibly that's being processed, or a credit card payment, or a EFT possibly where the customer wants a range to be drafted on a recurring basis, all of that is doable through our Smart Connect process. If your current vendor does not have web services available, one potential is they may have some ability, some API to import payments. Maybe they have a lockbox interface. So the web developer who is in effect processing the payment over the web could possibly feed some sort of other API that your current back office system may offer potentially.
Another one here, is there a measure for retention with fully automated customers versus classic customer types?
Yeah, I found that this is one of the more interesting questions I had found, actually. I have to be honest, I don't have any exact statistics, but I have some industry kind of background to it. Many years ago, I attended a focus group that one of our larger customers had arranged. They hired a consulting company to bring consumers in, and they had different panels of consumers. And one of the panels was a much younger profile. And the other panel was 50-somethings. And it was fascinating to see the difference in the attitude towards a full-service marketer. The older folks, the people in the 50s, wanted to deal with a full-service marketer. The younger folks were more likely to shop, okay? I actually think there is a difference, obviously, in retention between a propane marketer and a heating oil marketer, because I think there are companies on the phone today that probably do both. In the propane business, if you're providing the tank, obviously, you have a much stickier customer there, right? If you're in the heating oil business, it's much more easier for those consumers to shop, possibly. But my message today would be, if you're not offering self-service, you're not getting the customer in the first place. So the whole conversation of retention may not even take place because they're not signing up to get the product from you. They're going to somebody else that has a web self-service presence, and they look upon that as a more modern company. So unfortunately, I don't have statistics. Some of our web portal developers may have, or maybe there's some information from NPGA potentially, but that's kind of my industry answer to the question.
Another one, how do I increase customer enrollment in participation with the web portal?
Yeah, another great question. My notes here is promote, promote, promote. Certainly, if you're going to spend some dollars to do this, obviously. You're going to spend time also to try to make the decisions that have to be made to implement self-service. It's really important that you have a plan beyond just putting the web portal out there. So, promote it, stuffers in billing documents, letting people know, maybe offer incentives if they sign up. A number of our portal partners promote the idea of loyalty programs. So if they come to the website, they get some points that could be used for something else down the road, maybe a purchase of one of your products or some other product possibly. It's really important that you promote it. Now, on average, I think one of the initial goals should be 10 to 20% of your client base to at least get them to register. But it's important, they may register, but if they're not using the portal, you need to find out why. Right? So that's part of that gauging the success of the project. You need to continue to evaluate what are people doing on the web, what can we do better, can we offer some additional incentives, but definitely you need to promote it. Otherwise, you could spend some time and effort here and not get the results that you should be getting today. In today's marketplace, you must have consumers that would like to deal with you over the web.
Kind of touched on this a little bit, John, but another one, can I use my web portal to attract new customers?
Yeah, I would say positively. At a base level, if we're talking SneakerNet now, where we got the fundamental way of doing self-service over the web, at minimum, I would have a form on my website where a prospect could fill it out. So at minimum, you could get the email. As you don't want to rely on that consumer to have to call you to say I want to become a customer, because they may not pick up the phone and call you. At least at minimum, have a form. The ideal world would be have some ability to have that lead come into a back office system and then have a process in place where that lead could be delivered electronically to whoever the appropriate person in the organization to follow up. That's the real, the ideal world. But positively, if you're going to build a website and offer any level of self-service, actually even if you're not going to offer self-service, obviously I would promote the idea of having some method for the customer to say, I would like to be a customer.
If customers have questions on how to use the portal, can one of our CSRs log in and see what the customer is seeing, or log in to make a change on behalf of the customer without using the customer's personal username and password?
Yeah, definitely. I actually ran this question by a couple of our partners just to confirm, and the partners that we deal with all said yes, that your people in the office would have the ability to log in through the portal, access the account, look at the same information from a portal perspective that the consumer is looking at. In our world, if we're talking about Smart Connect being in play with our real-time web services, the data is the data. So there's no replication of the data. So if the data gets changed in the portal, it gets changed instantaneously in effect in the enterprise database, or if the data is being changed through one of our normal back office components, the data would be changed at the same time. So yes, there is the ability to support the customer that may not be 100% comfortable with the portal, and for you to look at the same information in the same format that your consumer is looking at over the web.
How can I provide a secure customer portal? I'm concerned about security.
Yeah, it's really important. I'm not an expert in propane, right? So it's important that if I had somebody come in and work on my propane system, that I hire an expert. So I think it's really important, because this is a very important question, that you partner with the right company that can address the concerns that you would have regarding network and security. In today's world, it's very critical that the right pieces get put in place to protect your business. You protect your business all kinds of ways, but protecting your business from a data perspective is definitely important. Those problems can be addressed. There's technical ways of protecting your information. There's something called the DMZ, where you can restrict who has access. Only certain people with certain credentials can access through the portal. So I would highly recommend that you should be talking to both your portal developer about these considerations, and then also your back office vendor should be involved in those conversations to make sure that you feel comfortable that your business is protected through any kind of intrusion that could take place.
John, just a question that I have. Can you give us a sense, just from your perspective, on where you think the propane industry is today as it relates to technology? Do you kind of feel like that acceptance of new technology is taking place out there?
Yeah, definitely, Brian. Actually, from a portal perspective, if I look at using our Smart Connect product as the example, I think the level of activity on that side of our business, I would say over the last several years, is probably up by 25 to 30%. On the mobile side, mobile computing definitely there's a much larger penetration. And actually, the move has been on the mobile side, people have moved from non-wireless devices on the vehicles to wireless. And I think what's reflecting there is that there's a move in the marketplace. A lot of consumers want to go on will call delivery. So the need for maybe wireless communication is greater today on the market than it was in the past. So they're willing to look at the additional expense possibly to put a wireless connection out to the vehicle. And then on the service side, companies more and more are looking to see how they drive revenue and how they diversify. So more and more companies are getting involved in true service, I think, in the propane market. Rather than just doing tank sets, more and more companies are maybe doing full-blown HVAC. And to do a lot of those things, you need technology. And the last piece probably, and this is probably the most apparent one, is the whole idea of routing trucks, putting the deliveries in a sequence that you tell the driver to deliver them in. We've been supporting that technology, I think, for at least 15 years. But in the last 3 to 5 years, the adoption rate on that technology has gone through the roof. And to be quite honest, the technology hasn't improved really. What's available today really would have been available 10 or 15 years ago, but the market's more accepting of it. And I think what may be happening there is the changeover on the drivers is taking place. The driver that's been with us 35 or 40 years is retiring, and the new guy the new gal that's driving that propane truck doesn't know the route as well. So why not apply technology to the problem rather than making inefficient deliveries?
And just, when you're out and about in the industry, going to shows, what's that consistent message or concern? What are those conversations like that you hear the most, I guess, from the industry and from the retailer?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. If you asked me that question a few years ago, it would have been the price of product. The good news, I think, in the last year or two, the price of product is come down. From a technology perspective, I think, and there's a little bit of a flavor of this in some of the Q&A that we got, there's a little bit of a concern that we're not technical people. We're propane marketers. And sometimes I think there's a bit of a paralysis in moving forward with technology because of that concern. I think over the years there have been some technology failures. Us technology providers sometimes don't always do the best job, and people get a little skittish in making that decision. I think that's the biggest thing. We're not propane marketers. I'm not sure how to go about doing this, and I think it's really important that you pick the right partners. That's what it comes down to. Pick the right partner. They should be able to give you comfort level and move forward. And I always also recommend crawl before you walk, before you run.
And just kind of going back to the web portals and everything you addressed today, what kind of timetable are we looking at for the retailer who's interested in something like this? What kind of timetable for them to get something like this up and running?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I actually had this conversation with a couple of our partners, actually, to try to get a sense of what their timelines are. And it would somewhat depend on the scope of the self-service offering, obviously. I think if you go into the middle level of some of the functionality I was talking about, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 months from start to finish. Doesn't mean somebody's on the clock, for that period of time. It just takes time to get the right pieces in place, work through the process and how you want to, what your business rules, those types of things. If you're talking about simply taking payments and looking at balances over the web, I think you could certainly tighten up that time frame and probably get it done in maybe the 3-month time frame. But again, I don't want anybody walking away saying, oh my God, I'm paying somebody for 6 months worth of time and effort. That's not the case. It just takes some time to get some of these things implemented is what it comes down to.
John, I think that's all we have for now. We really appreciate you joining us today. You had mentioned before about if anyone wants to reach out to you with additional questions. Do you want to give them that information?
Yep. There's my contact information. You can reach me directly at the 800 number, or if you want to just simply drop me an email, I'll respond as quick as possible. My intent is that if anybody submitted questions that we did not answer today, my intention would be over the next several days or so to respond back to each person if there was a question that I don't think we addressed on the call today. I just want to, again, personally thank LP Gas Magazine and Brian for offering the platform here, and I hope everybody got something out of today.
Thank you, John. And one closing note here, and sticking with our technology theme, LP Gas Magazine in 2017 will launch a retailer technology column series. We will have 6 retail companies each write a column about a technology that's been useful to their operations. Currently seeking those companies interested in sharing their experiences. If you are interested in writing one of these columns, please contact me. I'm at 216-706-3748 or B. Richardson at northcoastmedia.net. Thank you.
All right, and thank you both. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar sponsored by AdSystems. If you have any more questions, do not hesitate to contact our presenters at the emails on your screen now. Links to their email addresses are in the bios at the left. You can also download a PDF of today's presentation as well as other documents from the resources box on the left-hand side of your screen. An on-demand recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you tomorrow afternoon and will be available online for a full year at lpgasmagazine.com/webinars. If you'd like to share this webinar with your colleagues, you can do so via any of the links on the left-hand side of your screen. Thank you again for attending today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you at a future webinar.